This is cold. It's
this
workable.
is a normal auto light.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good. I'm gonna get an Americano. Do you have lactose-free milk?
Sure. I can get you some.
Okay, cool. I'll just
Every
get
time I hear that, I laugh.
It's not that funny.
What can I get
Let's
you?
just let me have my coffee
Can I
order.
get a tea?
A tea?
A chamomile?
What do you
Want a
What do you have?
Come out.
Yeah, great. Perfect. Thanks, Barb.
Thanks, Norman.
So we are chatting about city issues. What we're going to do, the way we're going to do this show, is we're going to run these little documentaries, and then you and I are going to chat about it.
And I think what we want to try and get to is how do we provide just more entry points for the public to be engaged in this conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are not experts.
So who are we?
Yes, we are not experts.
Why don't we introduce each other?
Yes.
Okay.
Go.
Okay. So
You introduce
John.
me first.
So John Brodhead, for those of you who don't know him, has now left after 10 years of working in politics to work at Evergreen City Works, to take the lead at Evergreen City Works in engaging the space between the public and high-level decision makers and policymakers and building a connective tissue where both voices are equally heard. Is that a
That
good way?
sounds way better than what we actually do.
Okay.
So we'll go with that.
Okay, well, let's go with that.
Yeah,
Let's go with
so
that.
now
Okay.
I'm going to try and describe you.
Okay.
So Zahra Ebrahim,
Yeah.
so you started Architects
At
8
20
years ago.
yep,
at
22.
age 22. But really a design firm
Yeah.
that focuses on how do we bring people into these conversations and how we use design to do that. And
Yeah.
you and I have worked together for a number of years. You're professor at OCAD, if you can believe it. And you do a ton of amazing stuff. So enjoy the first documentary.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah. First one is a fantastic one called, what did he call it? Do you remember?
Shaking Up the Neighborhood.
Shaking Up the Hood.
Shaking Up the Hood.
Placemaking in Scarborough.
It's a young man named Aslam Sheikh who has been living in Scarborough and has been actively engaged in issues around urban planning and civic engagement and design. So yeah,
Great, enjoy.
let's take a look.
It's really hard to actually care about where you live when you live in the suburbs. Suburbs are not necessarily designed for people. They're designed almost for the automobile exclusively. Because of this, suburbs lack much of a pedestrian scale. There's not a lot of places that people can walk to from their homes, from their front steps. And because of this fact, there's not a lot of places for people to meet, to congregate, to socialize. The idea behind placemaking is that it's exactly what it says. It creates places in the suburbs where there are a lack of these places. Placemaking kind of counteracts this. The nearest shopping center that you can go to is, fortunately for everybody here, a nice smart center. In order to get there, you're going to have to walk from this section down the street, up a major arterial road, over the highway bridge. So what I'm going to demonstrate is that in order to do that from some parts of the new developments that they've created here, it's going to take you well over half an hour. At that point, really, you're either considering taking a cab or getting a car. If you actually look right down the street here, you'll see this highway's coming up. It's completely fenced off. I can see it, it's off in the distance, but I certainly can't walk to it from here. If I was able to create my neighborhood to be a more pleasant place, add places to go to and places to be, then perhaps people would be encouraged to leave their automobiles at home on the weekends and get out, walk around more, and at the same time meet each other. That's going to be the challenge going forward, is that we need to re-envision these neighborhoods for the pedestrian scale. And it sometimes is a challenge, but sometimes it's not. It's simply a matter of walking to your neighborhood and taking a look. There's a lot of places that could be reimagined into a place. Okay, so pretty much if you want to get to the nearest transit stop or walk towards the supercenter over there, you're walking down this. Why might this be discouraging for people to walk through? Well, it's certainly not interesting. You're not really looking at anything. Right behind me is the local community center. It's the Tam Heather Country Club. If you talk to anybody inside who works there, they'll tell you that none of the people who come there are actually from the neighborhood here. People drive down to this neighborhood to make use of the tennis facilities, and there's also an indoor golf during the summer months. I know once a year, the only time there's any kind of good community event is during Caravana, because they have their practices in there and people from the community walk in, they open up their doors and they have signs inviting people in. The rest of the year, there's absolutely nothing going on. It's kind of sad because it's a prime community center right in the middle of our neighborhood that nobody's actually able to take advantage of. There's no normal community center programming that goes on here. It's strictly tennis club for people who don't even really live here. So we're about to walk by the local cafe for the neighborhood, which is the drive-through country style. That's the closest decent cup of coffee on my street. In order to walk here from where we were before, that was about a 20-minute walk to get to the nearest TTC stop. At this point, if you're planning on heading to the nearest form of entertainment in the neighborhood, you're going to pay $3 for what is essentially a 1-minute bus ride. You might end up waiting another 10 minutes for the bus to come. Most people who come here probably just end up walking across the highway. That's the first person we might have seen on a bike. Good for them. Well, if you actually take a look down there, we have the housing in the neighborhood that we actually originally started out at. And as you can see, it's not much of a distance whatsoever, but in order to get here, we have to walk all the way around in order to get to the nearest shopping center. So really at this point, I can't blame anybody here for wanting to get a car in order to drive to the nearest shopping place, because this walk was pretty horrendous. We saw a few people walking, we saw one person riding on a bike. That's pretty much it. You saw cars going by you. There was no place to stop in between. There was no parks. The community center wasn't really particularly open to the local residents here. There's definitely a lot of opportunities. We have huge ocean fields. We have places that we can invest in. We have community centers that we can take advantage of. But really, it's a matter of people actually caring to stand up and do it. A resilient city can bounce back and to turn what appears to be a challenge into an opportunity. And I think the cities that are best able to do that will be the ones that will succeed.
Aslam, what I liked is he's actually taking this on his own community. It's not us saying, hey, here's what Scarborough needs. It's a person who's grown up there.
And so how much are we giving someone like Aslam in his condition? He has, he's worked in this community, he's grown up in this community, he's invested in the change that's going to happen. What is government doing to support him?
We don't need Aslam to spend his time trying to figure out the government system. We need to find partners for him that will manage that system navigation.
I'm uncomfortable as a city dweller in the way that we just talk about the suburbs, right? So we just talk about it as a complete blanket statement.
Yeah.
We have the inner suburbs, we have the outer suburbs, and they're so different.
I think one of the most exciting things going on in the world of suburbia and infrastructure, if that's actually a fun thing, one of the most exciting things, I'm such a dork.
You are.
Okay,
He is.
Is this kind of retrofitting of suburbia.
If we're talking about post-war suburbs, how engaged are the community in these redevelopments?
Right.
And how how far are we planning out these redevelopments for? Because the suburbs, the demographics, as you mentioned to me, are changing so dramatically.
Yes.
And so
I mentioned this off camera.
Yeah, just read an article from CBC last year that said the suburbs are for children, yet we don't have infrastructure for children. And I think that's the sort of mental model we have around the suburbs, which is you move to the suburbs when you have children. Right. Like, what are your assumptions around why people move to the suburbs?
The cost of housing has risen so much that at a certain point, you have to, what's the term, drive to qualify? So it's drive to qualify for a mortgage. So you keep driving until you qualify for the house you want.
I feel that whenever I hear about, how we're going to quote unquote, deal with the suburbs, it's like we want to take something away from the people in the suburbs. Like, we're going to take away your access to the city. Like, we're going to take something away from you. I just wonder if you were watching this right now and you're like, yeah, that's a conversation I've been having.
Yeah.
Like,
what do you do with it?
What do you do with it, especially if you feel like it's about you?
But this is why I think the idea on block captains is so good.
Yeah.
And block captains, for those who are not aware, is a project Zahra and I are working on together to have people on their blocks become a captain and lead conversations about issues like this. And then those block captains would then feed into a broader conversation.
It's creating a citizen infrastructure that we can use to talk about any issue. I'd
be really interested to find examples of organizations in the suburbs who are connecting people.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
Aslam is a good example. I wonder if he has had conversations in his community. Is he thinking about bringing this together?
And how willing are people to be engaged in the conversation? I feel quite daunted by the conversation about the suburbs. I feel that the type of work that we've done, we've seen that it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of investment and a lot of precarious circumstances,
Yeah.
right? We don't know if our initiatives are going to last.
I think the problem is the suburban-urban divide is becoming politicized.
Totally.
And you look at Toronto.
Yeah.
And the mayoral campaign next year is going to be a conversation about urban suburban.
Totally.
Now that could be good. Interesting solutions can come out of that, but it can also create a lot of smoke without a lot of fire. I love your project about East Scarborough storefront. And for those, I'm looking at the camera now. For those who don't know about East Scarborough storefront, it's a great example of community mobilization for great change that you're a part of, working with a bunch of great community leaders there. But the scalability of this, you've become home in both worlds.
Totally. And as a designer, I feel highly uncomfortable that I pontificate about the suburbs on a regular basis and have never had the lived experience of it.
So I'm going to suggest you need to go live out in Durham.
I'm actually going to live.
Yes, you have to live.
I shouldn't say. It's actually kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And I still am working where I'm working,
Yes,
which is downtown at Queen and Gladstone.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to do the commute, maybe drive, take the GO train, try a couple different ways, getting in here, try and engage your neighbors. I
wonder if the options to do the kind of work that I do would just be in that region.
Right.
Okay, and I'm going to suggest that you spend a week in a social service agency somewhere in the inner suburbs, and you are going to do what you do on your laptop.
What do I do?
I think you hang out on your laptop, right?
I do.
Is that what you do?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, who's that guy? He's
Yeah.
hanging out.
You're
Don't worry
just
about
going to
him.
be a person
He's hanging out.
who's hanging out and watching the social infrastructure around you to affirm the idea that these inner suburbs have such a strong social infrastructure.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Well, that's something.
It's a deal.
What would you suggest to people watching? How can they get engaged in this?
I think people should, if you can, log onto our Facebook page and leave your stories. Leave them in bullet point lists, stream of consciousness paragraphs, articulate as clearly as you want.
Pictures.
Pictures.
You love visuals.
Pictures. I love visuals. And even map out your journeys around the suburbs, how you get groceries, how you get to work, where your children go to play, just anything that would help us dispel biases and the assumptions that we have.
Yeah, great. Fantastic.
Cool.
That sounds
okay.
doable.
Check,
Okay.
please.
Check?
Check.
You're
I'm going to
paying.
take the check.
You're paying?
You got 1.5 points.
Usually we call her T-Rex arms
Okay.
because you can't quite reach your wallet.
Where's Marvin? We'll get the check.